Today, September 9th, 2020. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner Lenova is absent. Commissioner Sprague?
Here.
Commissioner Kalis is present. Commissioner Yednick?
Present.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Commissioner Creech?
Present.
Chairman Johnson?
Here. Thank you. Ms. Nyes, any changes to the agenda this evening?
No changes.
Let's see. We have no citizens' concerns and comments, I guess. So we'll move on to the consent items. Docket number SCBA 20-15, 7-Eleven at 14 North Elmhurst Road. We have several signs. We have 2 wall signs, a freestanding sign, and 3 canopy signs for the new 7-Eleven/Exxon gas station. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Kalis and Yednick?
Commissioner Kalis votes yes. Commissioner Yednick?
Yes.
Commissioner Sprague?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Creech?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes. Items for review, docket number PC 20-13, appearance review for Foxboro Apartments, exterior building modifications at 470 Foxboro Drive. Ms. Nyes, anything on this?
I'll just give a brief introduction to this because I did want to make a note about their monument signs. So what they're requesting is to paint the ephes on the buildings, and they have a green color scheme. So the body color will be this one color green on the left, the trim will be a little bit darker, and the doors will be a gray. Here's it a little bit larger color scheme. And this is what I wanted to get to. So administratively, we've approved the change of the sign color from this darker blue that was approved at the last meeting to this green to match what they're proposing today. So this is not part of the request today. I just wanted you guys to know that we did already approve that administratively. That's all I had.
Thank you. And is the petitioner here? Please state your name and address for the record.
Kent Ricklehoff, 135 Water Street in Naperville.
Okay. Tell us what we're looking at tonight.
Yeah, so we've got, if you're familiar with the property a little bit, there's 2 types of buildings. There's a 2-story building, which you're seeing in the screen right now, and there's also a 3-story building. Currently, the property is pretty much just an ivory brownish color throughout. There's really no appeal to anything. And it's also at the current paint is at the end of its useful life. So we're looking to accomplish 2 things. One is to repaint the property to prevent the life of the property. And 2 is we're looking to do a color change to add a little life and character to the property as well. So what you're looking at is, when you look at in this particular picture, you've got a lot of brick that's on the tier, and then you got the ephes, what you're seeing. So our recommendation is to only paint the ephes. The brick, our block, will stay as its natural form, but we'll change the actual ephes structure of the building.
And what about the downspouts?
Certain downspouts we're recommending to paint, some we're recommending to leave. So in this particular picture, the downspouts on the block itself, and we feel like that color blends in really nicely. But if you look at a previous picture with the 2-story buildings, those come down over the ephes, which I don't even know if you can see one of that picture. But in this general picture, it would come down on the ephes. We are recommending to paint that the same color as the building.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to the commission then. Commissioner Sprague.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Kent.
Good evening.
I just want to make sure, I think the colors will look very nice and go with the rest of the complex. Will you fix or repair anything that needs to be repaired first? And then as far as the prep work, as far as scraping or priming, that'll all get done first?
Yeah, so it'll be 3 crews that'll be working on the, 3 stages and 3 crews. So stage 1 will be coming through and redoing all the caulking and all the sealants throughout the windows, doors. There's some metal brackets that come out of the building and hold the balconies. Those all get new sealants on there. And then kind of a second crew is an EFIS crew. So the EFIS crew will come down and do any EFIS repairs and caulking on that particular area. And then the final crew is the painting company, the painters, which just come back and paint the final product. So yes, we will fix any repairs, we'll scrape, prime, do all the necessary. The painter follows a spec that's designed by our Sherwin-Williams rep, so it's designed by the paint company, so they have to follow that spec.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalis.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for presenting again. I appreciate that you're sprucing up the whole place. I think the contrasting colors is a good idea. My only, wasn't a concern, but just the spraying and cleaning of it first so that the paint, sticks well. I was a little bit allergic to painting services and just making sure the maintenance is good, but as long as you do it properly, it sounds like you will, and you have a lot of crews available to do that. I have no concerns or questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Yednek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, you weren't kidding last time when you said you were going to be back soon.
I also thought
You're
that.
doing a lot of nice things over there. It looks good. I'm going to have to sell my condo and fill out an application for rent, but I have no questions. It looks nice. Thanks.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah, I did have one question. For the stairwells, I actually was with a couple of clients in the past looking at your units, and one of the comments from both of them were about the stairwells and how dark they are and things like that. For the stairwells, are you painting them a lighter color? And is there any thoughts about, I don't know if you'd be in charge of like better lighting in there, but it's pretty dark in there.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't have a plan to paint them because all the stairwells are the block structure. And we normally don't like the paint block and also with some of the costs. So we don't plan to paint them. We do plan to paint the doors to try to change the appearance of those a little bit. And yeah, so I was actually on property day. There's each corridor kind of has a catty corner light on each corner of them. And the bulbs are very dim. So yes, we do intend to do an LED upgrade to those wall sconces to help brighten those up.
Okay. That was my biggest, well, especially for, the biggest focus is getting more tenants in there. I know that 2 clients I had were concerned about that, so that was it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Creech?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ken, thanks for continuing the good work over there. I'm looking forward to seeing it be completed in a couple of years.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. The gray on the doors, I noticed in these pictures, there's trim on the doors. Are they just going to be the same color?
Yeah, so
the detail work?
Yeah, so the framing trim will be the same color as the door. So you'll have the EFIS, which is the one color, and then the whole inset will, in a sense, be the same color.
Okay. I just wanted to verify that.
And
Because they almost look like 2-color right
It's
now.
called comfort gray, but it really flows well with the kind of palette scheme. So it's got a greenish tint to it as well. So it kind of does tie nicely together.
All right. Any other questions from the commission on this? Seeing none, I will, we have conditions? Yes.
Yes.
Please read the conditions.
The first condition is the building's exterior and roof coping shall be power washed prior to the commencement of the exterior painting. And number 2, the exterior paint shall be exterior grade paint and shall be applied professionally.
Thank you. With those conditions, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Yednek, and who seconded?
Creech.
Creech.
Excuse me. Commissioner Sprague.
Yes.
Commissioner Kalis votes yes. Commissioner Yednek.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Creech.
Yes.
Took you out of order. Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
6 yeses.
All right. And while you're standing there, we'll move on to docket PC 20-14, minor site plan and appearance review for Foxboro Apartments site amenities. Same 470 Foxboro Drive address. Marcy, anything on that?
No, we can let him go.
All right. Do your thing.
Yeah, so what we're recommending to do is, in that picture there, on the center bank of trees where that one red picnic table is, our goal is we'll remove those 2 trees and we'll add a pavered patio area that will have 2 built-in propane grills for the residents to use along with a propane fire pit. And then in that same area, we'll have appropriate tables, chairs, seating areas for the residents to use. So this patio area will be open. We normally have restricted hours, usually from sunrise to sundown, so it's open during the day for resident usage at any time. Everything is, all the gas is hardwired and hooked up back to the property, so we don't have any propane tanks or anything like that. It is a little bit on the water line, so I know Phil, my landscaper's gone back and forth with a few revisions to make sure that is a safe line. We have lined it with plants and stuff to make sure that people don't walk off the patio towards the pond. And then it's just a nice amenity that we're trying to add along with some of the other features that we did with the dog park. And then there's also a bocce ball court and a cornhole set that will go along with that.
Okay, looks nice. Now we'll go right to the commission, same group. Commissioner Sprague.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the fire department. It states in there that the pit needs to be constantly attended when in use. Is that by the user or an employee has to be?
Correct. No, that would be by the user, so that it's just not left alone with nobody to observe anything that should, happen while it's being used.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The gas line, that'll have a gas shutoff?
Yeah, so the grills, I don't know, it's hard to see in the picture. The grills both have a built-in timer, so it can go up to 60 minutes. At the end of the 60 minutes, the grills automatically turn off. The gas will have its own separate one. And I believe one of the requirements was we had a shut-off line. And it also will have an emergency push button on the gas line as well. So in case of emergency, we'll be able to kill the gas flow to all devices.
Okay. Marcy, the floodplain requirements, will that all be cleared through permit issuance?
We can ask Kyle about that.
Yeah, the comments are pretty minor, just some minor revisions and minor relocations of the retaining wall. So yeah, that we'll be reviewing that in final permitting.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalis.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, thank you. It looks like a very nice amenity. I'm sure people are going to love it. I'm thinking of coming by as well, playing some cornhole. Are there, did I miss, are there bollards by the parking lot? Like, I was a little concerned about the proximity to the parking lot and those spaces. If somebody were pulling into a spot and shot over that, I mean, you'd have to be plowing through to get over those blocks, but are there any bollards on the plan? Is that a requirement?
Currently not bollards, but our plan is, per code, we have additional spots on the property for parking, so we're not at maximum. So our plan is to hash mark both entries off.
Oh, okay.
So that way there's not a parking lot directly in front of the pavers.
Okay, I must have missed that, or if that wasn't in there.
I don't know if it's on the drawings, but that is our intention, to make sure that there is clear pathway in and out of the grilling station.
Okay, good. I was trying to look on the map to see if there's a better spot for it, and I was going to ask you why'd you put it there, but it makes sense next to everything else in a row. I'm just concerned if a car's not paying attention and goes into it, that would be bad news. But if those spots are marked off as, so you're saying they're going to be marked off as no parking there? Right, okay, then I think that would solve that, but again, looks lovely. No further questions, thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Yedna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, again, it looks really nice. I'm getting more and more jealous. Yeah, no questions. It sounds like you guys are thinking through a lot of the issues and anticipation, so looking forward to the changes.
Commissioner Thompson,
No questions, thanks.
Commissioner Creech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, another great addition to Foxboro, so looking forward to seeing it. That's all I have, thank you.
You said these were propane?
Well, natural gas.
Natural gas,
Sorry, yes,
okay.
natural gas, yes.
Because otherwise there'd be a big tank somewhere.
No,
Okay.
no, we're actually running the line back to the clubhouse, which currently has natural gas, right?
All right, that's all I had. Any other questions before we take a vote? Marcy, any conditions on this one?
No conditions.
All right, then I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Creech and Yednick.
Commissioner Creech.
Yes.
Commissioner Yednick.
Yes.
Commissioner Sprague.
Yes.
Commissioner Kalis votes yes. Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Keep up the good
All
work.
right, thank you.
All right. Next up, we have docket 2020-12A and B, setback variances for Atlantic Aviation at 951 South Wolf Road. Ms. Nyes, anything before we start? Oh, no, let's go to the second.
I've got something.
You've got something.
I do. All right, notice is hereby given that the Plan Commission of the Village of Wheeling will hold a public hearing on September 9th, 2020 at 6:30 PM in the boardroom of the Village Hall at 2 Community Boulevard, Wheeling, Illinois, to act on the following petitions by Atlantic Aviation, property owner associated with the construction of a new airplane hangar facility located at 951 South Wolf Road, which is in the AP Airport Zoning District. 2020-12A is a variation from Title 19, Zoning of the Wheeling Municipal Code, Chapter 19-08, Airport District and Runway Protection Zones and associated sections, to reduce the front building setback from 50 feet to 15 feet along South Wolf Road, and 2020-12B, a variation from Title 19, Zoning of the Wheeling Municipal Code, Chapter 19-08, Airport District and Runway Protection Zones and associated sections, to reduce the side building setback from 17 feet to 2 feet along the south property line. All interested persons are invited to attend and be heard. Docket number 2020-12A and B, to be published in the Wheeling Herald on Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. And then the zoning variation? Yes? No? No.
Yes.
Yes.
Zoning variation.
A zoning variation is intended to be a method of adjustment to equalize regulations where the zoning code has created an unnecessary hardship. A variation is designed to allow affected property owners the same rights and privileges that others enjoy in the same zoning district. In order to be granted a variation, a petitioner is required to demonstrate through testimony to the Plan Commission at a public hearing that their request meets the standards of the village code, including but not limited to how their individual situation is unique or unusual. Prior to the public hearing, the petitioner provides written statements meant to show that the request for variation meets the standards established in Title 19. The commission chairperson will typically direct that these statements be entered into record without a full reading of them at the hearing. Based upon the testimony and supporting materials submitted, the Plan Commission will make findings in support of or against the petitioner's testimony and report those findings to the village board.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Nyes, anything you want to say about this one?
I think we can let the applicant.
Okay, is the petitioner here?
Good evening.
Are all three going to speak tonight?
We will probably in some capacity. I am the petitioner with Atlantic Aviation. My name is Mike Kurgan.
I need
Thank
to
you.
swear in whoever is going to be talking.
Probably the both, yeah. You want to take this one?
You can, from there.
All three of you then.
Just put your right hand up.
Do you swear the testimony you're giving tonight to be the truth?
Yes.
I see one. Okay. Go ahead and explain what we're doing.
All right, my name is Mike Cody. I'm the architect, Ware Malcolm and Associates. We are here before you today, obviously, because of the shape of the lot. The location of the hangar is really necessitated by two things. Obviously, the setbacks that Wheeling has off of Wolf Road, as well as the setback from the center of the runway. We're really restricted with the FAA on the hangar's ability to be located any closer to the east based upon the FAA requirements that are involved in keeping the buildings a certain distance off of the runway. In order to make the building practical, the 50-foot setback, we struggled with it. This is probably scheme 32 that you're seeing right here of the site plan. Trying to shuffle it about, shift it to the left. Obviously, we shifted it to the south, and the reason we're asking for the other setback is to try and minimize the impact of the 50-foot setback. The further we kind of shift the puzzle pieces apart, hopefully the less impactful it is. We've stair-stepped the office, obviously, to try and accommodate that 15-foot setback rather than, giving it the full width of the hangar as we have typically done. We feel like the setback on the south the burden is easing. It's a little easier because Atlantic Aviation owns that property as well. So we took some very good steps to try and navigate the two different pieces of property and the location of the building. I don't know if you want to go into the elevations or if we just want to talk about the setbacks for right now.
Right now, we're just on the variations. Anything else on the variations?
I think that's it.
Okay. This is a public hearing. I don't know if there's anyone here to talk about it. Okay. Let's go to the commission then. Commissioner Creech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the petitioner. I have no questions. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Thompson?
No questions for me, thank you.
Commissioner Yednick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the only, just to clarify in my head, this new building is going to be north of your existing buildings, correct?
It is.
Okay. Yeah, I thought so. I drove by it the other day. No questions. I think it's logical what you're trying to do.
Commissioner Kalis?
Thank you, Chairman. So I used the word practical plan. That's the only practical plan. I appreciate all the details and the variations that you've gone through to figure this out, or try to at least. Is it that there are literally no planes that would fit in if you made the building that small to fit that setback?
Correct. The ability to park the planes that Atlantic Aviation has the need for would be impinged by that.
Okay.
We did play with the size of the building a couple of times to really fit the correct planes inside the buildings as well.
Okay.
We've actually got them angled into the hangars in order to kind of keep the building depth as shallow as possible.
Okay. I was trying to just visualize, I don't know how big a plane is compared to that, but no further questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Sprague?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mike. You were stating about the setbacks with the FAA.
Yes, sir.
Is the building as close as it can be right now? Or is there room that you could go east?
It is as close to the setback, the FAA minimum setback as it could be.
Okay. The existing fence that's out in front now along the road, will the corner of the new office building, will that be closer to the road than what's there now, or is it inside the existing fence?
It's still inside the existing fence, right?
Yeah, the fencing proposed in this project is on that east line, so we'll be slightly more east to the tune of about 25 feet, which is the variance we received from the FAA.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
No, the existing fence that's out in front right now, I was wondering.
So on the far left of this image, where there's a parking lot, that's the
I
existing.
think he's talking about over here.
The yellow line?
Are you talking about along Wolf Road?
Yes.
Yeah.
The fence along Wolf Road.
Oh, yes, yes. So it'll be eastward now, right? So it'll be on the east end or the bottom of this image alongside the proposed parking lot.
Okay. How many feet, I couldn't really find it on any of the prints, how many feet from the road to the office building? Office part? Do you know?
From the road to the corner of the office building?
Yes.
There appears to be about 20 foot from the road to our property line, and therefore another 15 feet.
So
I'm stating that.
approximately 35 feet?
About 35 feet.
Okay. Yeah, I was just concerned about, a car coming off the Wolf Road and careening into your office with someone sitting inside. That was my only concern with being closer to the road. Also, snow plows have they don't care how far the snow goes when they're plowing their road either.
This is true.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
I've really had nothing on this one myself. Any other questions from the commission? All right. Mallory, do we need to vote on each one separately?
Yes, they're different docket numbers.
Okay. So first I need a motion on 2020-12A.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Commissioner Creech?
Yes.
Commissioner Sprague?
Yes.
Commissioner Kalis votes yes. Commissioner Yednick?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes. All right, then we'll move on to docket number PC 20-6.
Nope,
Major.
2020-12B.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2020-12B. Thank you.
So moved.
Second. Commissioner Creech?
Yes.
Commissioner Kalis votes yes. Commissioner Sprague?
Yes.
Commissioner Yednick?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
6 yeses for the variance.
And then I need a motion to close the public hearing for both of these.
So moved.
Second.
Go through our voice.
You can do voice.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now, moving on to PC 20-6, major site plan and appearance review for Atlantic Aviation at 951 South Wolf Road. Ms. Nyes, anything from you on this before we go to the petitioner?
No.
All right. I don't know that you gave name and address for the record.
Yes, Mike Kurgan, I'm with Atlantic Aviation, and our main office is at 1011 South Wolf.
All right. And if you two are going to talk, I'll ask the same thing.
Sure, absolutely. Again, I couldn't underscore enough that location being a major contributing factor to the entire site plan layout due to the curvature of Wolf Road that Mike highlighted. We've already obtained an FAA setback variance of 25 feet via FAA 7460. Like I said, there's a minimum setback from the center line of the runway requirement of 750 feet. We have received approval to encroach that by 25 maximum. Site plan perspective, we are proposing a 24,750 square foot hangar with an attached 3,000 square foot office. To accommodate the aircraft being moved in and out and parking, we are also proposing roughly an 85,000 square foot concrete tarmac, which would be immediately adjacent to our existing, an extension of our existing tarmac, if you will. From a design and aesthetic perspective, all of the design you would notice is one, in accordance with, it meets or exceeds all airport requirements, and it's also consistent with a build we did in 2011 and 12, what is known as Hangar 42, immediately to the south of that. Most notably, a minimum of 8-foot precast concrete with reveal at the base of the hangar, finished with metal paneling to the deck. The attached office complex will be entirely precast panels with reveal. We also added some architectural interest. This is a good image, thank you. The center of that office complex is an additional precast panel painted with a darker color, just to add a little bit of interest for folks driving on Wolf Road and seeing the property. All the signage is again consistent with what is existing, has already been approved and existing on our facilities farthest to the south, which is hangar 40. All lighting being proposed is again consistent with what's existing there. All parking lot lighting is surface mounted LED wall packs aimed down at a 45, just so as to illuminate the parking lot for safety and security as opposed to inhibiting any drivers on Wolf Road. And then any airside lighting is again in accordance with what's allowable at the airport and consistent with what's the existing conditions. Again, surface mounted LED wall packs down at a 45 with safety in mind for any inbound, outbound aircraft that might be utilized in the airport. And then lastly, a robust landscape plan just to break up some of the industrial look from some of the folks driving down Wolf Road, as well as to just kind of liven it up a little bit. So any questions, feedback, we're certainly open to answering any outstanding concerns.
All right. Commissioner Kalis, let's start with you.
Sure thing. Thanks, Chairman. And thank you for presenting that. As far as giant industrial buildings go, this one looks very nice. You hammered on it quite a bit that it is consistent with your existing building, and that was my main concern or question, that it looks similar. And I do appreciate the, as you say, the robust landscaping, just to give it a little bit of life to an otherwise, very sterile environment, commercial. I have no real questions. That's it.
Okay. Commissioner Yednick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if we vote this one down, we just mess you up after we approve the last one. We tend to, I really have very few questions. I just thought of this one earlier or tonight, and when I was looking through things earlier, we tend to talk a lot about trash enclosures here, which is not that big of a deal. We're going to talk about it later tonight. The one thing I see the location, but then on the drawing it said something about see the enlarged, and I don't think we got the enlarged. And then the brochure that was included with the trash enclosures it was like a marketing brochure that included all their materials. So I was just kind of curious what you were going with out of that brochure.
Thank you for reminding me. I actually brought some samples. It was requested to bring some with, if anybody would like to see them tonight. Okay. This is some faux wood paneling that we intend on using on the exterior of the trash enclosure. That's the finish. In terms of the actual architectural of the enclosure, I would ask that, Mike, if you want to speak to that.
So the majority of the enclosure is the precast.
Name and address first.
Mike Cody, 1315 22nd Street, Oak Brook.
Thank you.
Let's just say the trash enclosure is precast, aside from the doors. The operable doors need a different kind of a material, otherwise nobody would be able to open the precast. So we lighten them up by utilizing this product, which is a faux wood product, and it's a siding, essentially. But it's able to be mounted on the doors, and it's durable enough to withstand the opening and closing of the doors all the time. So that's what that product catalog was included for.
Okay, but then it seems like you went with like a gray and a beige scheme. Is that going to be the only wood, or is that going to be more stained or molded to match the building?
The wood will actually be gray. It'll be a gray.
Okay, so
we didn't get the correct color.
It'll blend with the building, with the color scheme of the building. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I didn't see an enlarged view, and like I said, we tend to talk a lot about trash enclosures in this.
Right.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Will be the slate gray.
Okay,
that is
gotcha.
in the brochure. I just was unable to get a correct sample in time.
Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Commissioner Sprague.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no questions.
Commissioner Thompson.
No questions.
And Commissioner Creech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my only question right now is because I really didn't have any. Looking through your packet earlier, which is very good, by the way, and it usually makes our job a lot easier when you
Yes.
give us all this kind of information.
Here.
But that particular product that you're showing, I thought that was a metal product.
We're still on the trash enclosure?
Yes, that product you just showed us.
Composite?
That's a composite?
It's a composite.
Like I said, I was under the impression that was a metal
Doesn't it go on a metal frame?
product.
It's on, it's a pre.
Metal frame behind it. So there's a galvanized post, it's kind of like a regular fence gate behind it, and then this product gets installed over.
So that's different than what you submitted?
No, that's right here.
No, longboard comes in a couple different varieties. It comes in the, it does have an aluminum product as well, but it also has a milled product similar to this.
Again, just looking at your packet, when looking at the product, their cross-section, it shows it to be a metal product. So could I see that?
Sure.
Particular? Do you happen to know what gauge of vinyl this would be? Because it is a pretty sturdy product, I have to say.
And that's why we utilize this.
For as thin as it is, it's very sturdy. So, again, other than that, great-looking building. I'm not concerned about anything else because of how good you presented your packet to us. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I really don't have anything that hasn't already been covered. Fire department, any concerns prior to permitting?
No, that we've handled or hammered out all of the items that we had positional issues with.
The access is good?
As good as it's going to get for an airport where you have access to one side basically most of the time.
Understood. Anything in engineering?
No, Pinnacle has done a pretty good job of addressing all our comments and concerns, so we're ready to move forward.
Great. Any other questions from the commission? And are there any conditions?
Yes.
Yes. We had one condition, and it was that the applicant shall submit an irrigation plan prior to the issuance of an engineering permit for site work.
Okay. With that condition, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second. Commissioner Creech?
Yes.
Commissioner Kalis votes yes. Commissioner Sprague?
Yes.
Commissioner Yednick?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
6 yeses. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the good information. All right, next we have docket 2020-3, text amendments to modify zoning regulations for trash dumpster and garbage receptacle enclosures. Mr.
Oh, yes,
Secretary.
I have something to read. Sleeping on the job. Notice is hereby given that the Plan Commission of the Village of Wheeling will hold a public hearing on September 9th, 2020 at 6:30 PM in the boardroom of the Village Hall at 2 Community Boulevard, Wheeling, Illinois, to act on the petition by the Village of Wheeling seeking text amendments to Title 19 zoning of the Wheeling Municipal Code, Chapter 19.11, General Development Standards, Appendix D, Design Guidelines and associated sections in order to modify zoning regulations for trash, dumpster, and garbage receptacle enclosures. Copies of the proposed amendments are available at the Community Development Department. All interested persons are invited to attend to be heard. Docket number 2020-3 to be published in the Wheeling Herald on Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. And a text amendment is an amendment to the map or text of the zoning ordinance which affects the whole village. In order to be considered for a text amendment, the petitioner is required to demonstrate through testimony to the Plan Commission at a public hearing that the request meets the standards of the village code, including but not limited to how the proposed text amendment is compatible with Title 19 and the comprehensive plan. Prior to the public hearing, the petitioner provides written statements meant to show that their request meets the standards for a text amendment as established in Title 19. The commission chairperson will typically direct that these statements be entered into record without a full reading of them at the hearing. Based upon the testimony and supporting material submitted, the Plan Commission will make findings in support of or against the petitioner's testimony and report those findings to the village board.
Thank you. Ms. Nye, anything? And who's representing the village on this?
I'm going to turn it over to Director Clicker.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so what you have before you tonight is the proposed changes to the dumpster enclosure language of the zoning code. Obviously, I was not involved at the initial discussions of this. However, in reviewing the file and reviewing the documents and talking to those who were involved in this process going through, we believe what we're presenting to you is really as far reaching as we can go with zoning. Because again, zoning, the intent of it is to regulate location and to regulate use and type. We're quite honestly, I think we're actually kind of pushing the limits here a little bit by insisting on things in the zoning code that when you put it in a zoning code, you can, a petitioner can request variations from it. If there are things that we are insistent be in design of a enclosure, those should either be in the design guidelines or in the building code itself, because then there's not the opportunity for a variation request. So what you have in front of you is the language that we believe to be appropriate for zoning, again with that caveat that if you put it into zoning and it's inappropriate for zoning, somebody can, something that you don't really want to see varied, you are giving them an opportunity to request a variation. For example, even really the requirement that an enclosure shall have a concrete slab base, although somebody probably would not request a variation from that, because it's in zoning, somebody could request a variation from that requirement. If it was a building code requirement, that's a different set of rules and regulations and appeals and how they go about it. So that's where we are with this. The language is in front of you if you'd like me to go through specific language on that, but if you have any questions on it.
Well, let's start with Commissioner Creech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when you're talking about zoning, are you talking about both of these sections, sanitation and the design guidelines?
Well, some of the things regarding sanitation are, I mean, the enclosure itself is what we're talking about with the zoning. There are some things that we took out that were really duplicative to other municipal code sections, mainly our health code sections regarding the size or the type of dumpster that is used. And again, those are things we don't really want somebody to have the variation route available to them, so that's why we took those out.
The size of the trash enclosure are going to be based on the use, correct?
Correct. And our health code specifies on the use to make sure that you have appropriate size dumpsters for that. So if the health code is saying you need a certain size dumpster, the zoning code really shouldn't be dictating that as well.
Okay, when we discussed this earlier, it was brought to our attention that this is in two different sections, which is sanitation and related storage and with design guidelines. Why aren't both of these exactly the same? Why isn't the wording on both of these sections the same? Have the 6 or 7 items that would be requirements for sanitation and storage would be the same as the design guidelines. Because the wording that has been presented to us is very, very similar. Why wouldn't they just both be the same?
Again, there's aspects in design guidelines that maybe you don't want in your zoning code. For example, let me just, the new section that's being added in the design guidelines, you know, you don't want to, especially if you do want to give people options on the design, you definitely wouldn't want language like whenever possible in your zoning code. Because
I agree.
So when you have things like that you may or may not want them to do, that's inappropriate for a design guideline. When it's a zoning that you want them to adhere to but you don't, there's two aspects to it. Zoning size, location, or location setback, that's zoning appropriate. Things such as type of material, appearance, hinges, latches, those are really not appropriate for zoning. Because again, those are things that might change over the time with new construction technologies or new procedures that are brought forth by contractors, and they're more appropriate for building codes or design guidelines.
But these two particular things.
They will be very similar.
Okay. All right, so, because reading them and going over what is presented to us, some of the wording I feel needs to be changed.
Okay.
And as far as the only reason why we're doing this, I thought, was to try to make this as simple as possible for
Correct.
the people coming here, just like we're doing on the next text amendment.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be as friendly as possible. So being as friendly as possible, I think that is, if we give these people specific direction on what we're looking for on a trash enclosure, we're making it a lot easier for them. When we discussed this at the February 12th meeting, 7 months ago, we were pretty much all in agreement about no wood in any of these future trash enclosures. And the reason why we all decided on that was because of sanitation reasons for being able to clean these up. These trash enclosures are pretty much, I think he stated in here that it's going to be for all our zoning.
Mm-hmm.
So, and since we're changing some of our zoning in the next text amendment for restaurants and such, we pretty much can have a restaurant in every zone.
Right.
Except for residential.
Any of the business districts, yes.
Right, and industrial. Correct? Didn't we just pass something saying that we could put restaurants in an industrial zone?
No. Not since I've been working with Village, no. There's a,
Mixed use.
it would be in the mixed use districts where a restaurant might be appropriate. So the mixed industrial district,
Okay,
but not the straight industrial districts for a restaurant.
okay, so driving around town and seeing what I've seen as far as our trash enclosures and all the petitioners that have been coming towards us in the past, you know, there's been a number of different designs, and we pretty much steer them towards, you know, a safer, cleaner environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I've come up with a couple of things here. Again, we all agreed no wood.
If I could address that, that aspect of it. again, the idea or the point behind this being more flexible and easier to navigate, quite honestly, a new development, we're going to not, as it goes through the development review process, there won't be a wood recommended for a dumpster enclosure. Where we're looking at is, again, that this needs to be applicable across the entire village. In areas where there aren't dumpster enclosures now, if we insist with the new user that they come in, or if an apartment complex, that they add them in, we need to also be cognitive of the space requirements that are there, especially like apartment complexes and existing strip
Well, we
centers.
review all this stuff separately anyways. So I mean, if
But
they're going
it becomes a barrier. If you don't allow them the option of wood, it becomes a barrier to putting enclosures in, because to fit around an enclosure around the necessary size of dumpsters that are for an apartment complex or an existing strip center, a wood enclosure will basically go within the same footprint. If you put in a masonry enclosure, it is going to be wider. In an apartment complex, that would most likely mean, since dumpsters are generally in the parking areas, that would mean the loss of additional parking spaces. And parking, as we know, in multifamily complexes is at a premium. So we don't want to encourage the loss.
You're telling me that a wooden fence with a post is approximately 10 inches.
6 to 10.
And how wide is this piece of cinder block?
12.
8 inches. 8
But with
inches.
the foundation, it's going to be 12.
No, it's 8 inches. Show me where there's a 12-inch block container in town.
I can't answer that off the top of my head.
There's none. So we're talking the same size. We're not losing any parking space. I can't buy that argument. And even if it is, it's a couple of inches. So we're not going to lose a 9-foot parking spot for, 8 or 9 inches. But again, if these people want to have a wooden trash enclosure, they can ask for that. And then they come to us and we look at it, and if it's under the right conditions, we say yes. But in the meantime, why don't we have just something that's very simple? This is what we prefer. We tell them that they can't use aluminum siding. We tell them that they have to sprinkler their.
Those aren't zoning code requirements, though. There's nothing in the zoning code that says you cannot use aluminum siding.
Okay. It's in our code saying that these are not approved products. So that's in our design code.
Correct.
Okay. We're changing some of our design guidelines, correct?
As part of this, yes.
Okay. So, in number 3, you agreed with me where this is not achievable. I think that should be removed. Also in number 3, opaque materials, precast concrete, composite fencing, masonry, steel or aluminum. I think that covers pretty many things that they could build a trash enclosure out of, besides wood, which are going to be a lot more easily cleaned and sanitized rather than wood. Number 4, the access gates shall have metal frames connected to separate steel posts and include a latch and locking mechanism. Number 5, bollards are required in all parking lots or in high traffic areas. And number 6, landscaping. Those are the things that I think should be on our text amendments, and I think they both should be the same. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
When you say both should be the same, just clarify that for me.
The sanitation and related storage requirements and Appendix D, the design guidelines. They're almost exactly the same the way that they're being presented to us right now, other than in the sanitation and related storage, there's only, well, there's 5 requirements rather than the 7 that I suggested. And the trash enclosures, they have six items, and I just added the 1. Which, actually, the bollards, they do speak about that in another section in the design guidelines, I believe, somewhere I read that.
Mr. Clicker, anything to add?
No.
Okay. We'll move on to Commissioner Thompson.
No questions for me, thank you.
Commissioner Gednick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Clicker, just, this is more education than anything. I'm trying to understand what you meant. I'm going to paraphrase this because I'm probably going to get it wrong. You said if we include something in the zoning, then that opens it up to variation requests?
Correct.
But that seems counterintuitive to me. It seems like if we don't include something, then you just have the Wild West. I mean, I'm trying to understand how, maybe you can explain to me.
What I'm saying is not necessarily structure requirements, but aesthetic requirements. When you start putting those into zoning codes, you're now opening yourselves up to variation aspects of it.
And so what's the negative variation? Then we have to have the meeting and they have to come to ask for a variance? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Well, rather than working with them on a design guidelines, so like for example, if you have a recommendation or a design guideline aspect for gates, that it have a certain type of latch or a certain type of hinge or something along that nature, or even if it gets into the thickness of material or gauge of material, if that gets put into zoning, somebody can come in and say, well, I have a hardship now because I can't, I can't find that hinge, or I can't get this particular latch. And that's not really a concern of zoning, the type of latch or the type of hinge or the thickness of material. Those are design guidelines. And again, if somebody can't find those materials, we can work with them as a professional staff and have alternative solutions to them that are still acceptable to people rather than having somebody have to come for a variation for it.
Well, excuse me, but if we have these particular requirements and they have, if they're saying that they have a hardship, then all they have to do is present to us something that is greater than or equal to that product. So we're not telling them that they have to use, some specific brand of hinge or a black hinge or, one with 5 screws. But if they have something that's greater than or equal to, then that's fine. And that's something that you guys review anyways.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Okay.
I'm just saying that, there are aspects that we require in our building codes and design guidelines that aren't zoning and shouldn't be zoning. For example, even with the self-closing, self-latching mechanism, pools are required to have a self-closing, self-latching mechanism on their gates. That's not a zoning code requirement, because you don't want somebody to come in and request a variation from that. That's a building code requirement. It's a safety aspect. So there's things like that nature. If it's truly a desire for the community to protect safety, to protect welfare, to protect aesthetic, it shouldn't be in zoning. It should be in a design guideline or a building code.
Anything else?
Commissioner Gednick?
I still had a couple questions, if you don't mind. Thanks. So then, let me understand then. So the design guidelines, are they still somewhat of an absolute? The word guideline throws me. Is that it's kind of like...
Well, with our process, everything has to come for a site plan review. So it would still be coming before this board for a review of it. And if it's not deemed to be appropriate.
Okay.
But what we're trying to do with streamlining or doing these is the initial entry to participation. You know, if somebody's looking at this and they realize, oh my gosh, I got to get all these variations for this, they may not even come forward with a proposal. Okay. If it's a design guidelines that they can work with us on something and work with this commission and come to an agreeable solution, they're more apt to come in.
I think what drove this originally, at least, and there might have been discussions before I got on, I've been on for, I don't know, maybe about a year and a half now, was the old wording said, wood or masonry. Mm-hmm. And I think we were of the understanding or opinion that restricted us, and people could come in with nice composite materials, newer materials and things. But we were saying, well, but our current zoning says wood or masonry, so I guess we maybe were considering those other materials as a variance. And so that was the drive to try to allow the petitioners more flexibility, mm-hmm. but still have a sanitary, a sturdy, sanitary, aesthetically pleasing structure. So, but I hear you're saying then that just the fact that now we're kind of putting other materials in the zoning, you're saying we shouldn't even really do that. We should just have that. Should we have just taken out wood or masonry completely and really directed more of the attention to the design guidelines?
My opinion, probably so.
Okay, then should we go back and redo that then? I mean, I'm not a professional in this area, so I'm learning a lot from what you're saying here. I think I'm getting an understanding of what you mean, that if it's in your zone, the zone is an absolute, the design guidelines.
Design guidelines are, one, more flexible, two, especially if somebody requests a variation. The reason why you don't want some of those types of things in your zoning code, variations are for the life of the property. So you vary from the products or that stays with that property for life.
Okay.
Design guidelines change, somebody comes through and wants to redo their dumpster enclosure, we can get the new materials, we can get the new standards out of them. But if there's a variation that says I can use the X, Y, or Z, they get to continue to use that. So it's not an aspect, that's why you typically in zoning don't put materials or types of finishes or things along that nature in zoning regulations, because one, people can request variations, and two, those variations stay with the life of the property. And as design trends change or products change in the future, you might actually be stuck with something rather than allowing the flexibility in the future.
Okay. Well, you're kind of convincing me that maybe we don't want to approve this and put you guys back to the drawing board and maybe rewrite it to, like I said, my feeling was that the understanding was that we had wood and masonry, and we felt like we were restrictive. We felt like we were forcing people to build in wood, and we didn't necessarily want them, and we weren't allowing for more modern materials that have improved, maybe, or if this was done 30 years ago or whatever,
right,
maybe those were the best options at the time. So I guess I would be maybe of the opinion to vote no on this and send you back to the drawing board. But the other question that I had then, and I went back and looked at what we talked about. There were a lot of things that we did talk about that weren't included. I think Commissioner Creech mentioned one about bollards. I'm on the fence on bollards personally, but I think we talked about having variations, and this, again, I think would be in the design guidelines based on what you're describing now, between commercial and residential. But the more I thought about it, I think one of the intent was that we thought that a commercial would get higher use or heavier use.
Right.
But in my mind, I think it might be the opposite, that residential, you got a bunch of amateurs. I always seem to see the residential trash enclosures are a mess. The commercial ones aren't, because the person that's bringing the trash out is getting paid and gets chewed out by the boss if they don't do it properly. Whereas, the apartment complex, people are piling up mattresses and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And I've actually worked in communities that have gone through the zoning regulations or design guidelines, and in multifamily complexes have said, tear out your dumpster enclosures for that exact reason, because everybody just throws it over the fence and keeps going. Whereas if there's no enclosure, at least they're going to hit the dumpster.
Yeah, well, but then you got an open dumpster. I can see, well, the one thing I did have in the design guidelines, and I'm kind of leaning towards them, I don't know if the chairman agrees or would want to take a poll of sending you guys back to the drawing board. I don't want to just say no, because I think my inclination to say no is because you're convincing me that we're pushing you guys in the wrong direction, and we should be taking your professional guidance on how this should be structured. But I was the one that kind of came up with that fifth bullet point about pedestrian access, so that it didn't have to be through the main gate. But the one thing I think that's missing there is that most of those I see, it's kind of like, it could be like a maze kind of an entrance, or there's an open entrance, but then there's a fence.
Right.
That, they can come in from the side and go in, so they don't have to open a gate. I think we just would, if we want to do that, the wording should include something to the effect of, but the dumpster is still going to be out of the line of sight.
Right.
That we want to encourage an easy pedestrian access, but we still want to block it. We just don't want a big hole in the gate.
Right.
Because then it defeats.
Because then, what they
defeats
do
the
is they
purpose
put
of
the
an
gate, but the
enclosure.
dumpster is still the size of the enclosure, basically, on the inside, and there's no room to maneuver around, so.
Yeah, so that I would recommend that, but I'm thinking that I would like to see this go back and have you come back with something that you would recommend that would guide us better in the future. That's all the questions I have then, Mr. Chair.
May I interject on just 2 comments on what Trustee Ednick was saying, just to clarify? One is, if that was the inclination to make changes, we could just continue this. We wouldn't have to vote no or send it back. We could continue it for changes, just so you know.
Okay, that's
For procedurally.
whatever the technical way.
On the second one about your comment about what Director Clicker was saying about the specifics in the design guidelines versus the zoning code, and Director Clicker, maybe you can clarify, it almost would seem like what's in the design guideline now, at least the statement of trash enclosure should be constructed of durable materials, would be more appropriate as a general statement for the zoning code, and then the specifics about the greatest extent possible the same material, if not the opaque materials, would be better for the design guidelines, because then it gives clear direction on the materials we like, without then the rigidity of a zoning code. So kind of, I think is that kind of what
I
you're
believe
thinking?
that, yes, you're exactly right.
So we'd still have in there that it has to be a durable material. It gives very clear things that it has to still be durable, but then the list of all the specifics would be in the design guidelines. So if that sounds like what you were hearing from him, I just wanted to give an example of the 2 differences.
Okay. Commissioner Kalis, your input.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have anything specific beyond what's been discussed. I'd like to just say in general that I greatly appreciate the passion and knowledge of the commission and the effort that the village, like the fact that we're arguing about how to make it easier for petitioners to come and make our place look beautiful. I love it, but so thank you both staff and commission for caring so much about getting this right. I think that says a lot about everybody, so thanks for the effort on all sides. I was also generally curious about the wood verbiage that's still in here, even though we largely, almost every time, say that we're not a fan of wood. So I do believe that in various ways it should be massaged a bit, so I don't have any questions, and I would just say that this is an amazing step, and again, I appreciate that we're even having this conversation, because we've always, for 4+ years that I've been here, we've always just been kind of confused about, what is suggested to the commissioners. The commissioners don't even, they're like trash and it's always the second thing, so I would say that I'm in favor of, and we're probably going to take a poll or something or whatever, but I don't have anything specific, but I don't think this is ready, but it is a really, really good, first swing at it. So thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Sprague.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm agreeing with a major consensus here, but I'm a little confused. The sanitation and related storage, that's the zoning part of it, and then the design guidelines, that's separate from the zoning.
Right.
Okay. So when you made the comment about that all enclosures shall have a concrete slab base, that's kind of pushing it for a zoning code?
Really, it kind of is. You know, I mean, it would be like saying all residential properties have to have a concrete driveway.
Right, so why isn't that just in the design guidelines?
Exactly. We can,
instead?
and I think that's where we're going through through this discussion.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to just propose all those changes right off the bat because of, again, the history that had gone on with this. And with talking with staff, we didn't want to just take everything out of the zoning. We wanted to kind of see how the discussion would go. We felt that what was in the language here was kind of what we could live with in the zoning and wouldn't cause us too many the perceived long-term problems that I was outlining. But we can easily rework this so that the zoning is simplified and the design guidelines are more robust.
I think the zoning should be, as you say, you know, worded so that we don't have to worry about someone trying to get a variance. Also, we need to gather up a list of things that we want included in the design guidelines, because from our previous meeting, there's many things that were mentioned that aren't in this now. So I agree. I think it needs to be reworked and made so the zoning is definitely for the zoning portion of it, and then to add things that we want into the design guidelines as a recommendation for what we want to see as a trash enclosure.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Things like the bollards and pedestrian access, that's all part of the site review, correct? So it can be in the guidelines.
It can be guidelines.
But not zoning, okay. And one of the things was in 1910, 050, you've got hollow materials such as vinyl fence panels and chain link fencing are not permitted, yet tonight we saw some some pretty sturdy.
Again, that kind of highlights the fact of putting those types of things in your zoning code. The building technologies are changing.
Yeah.
I saw that product too and went in person tonight and went, wow, that's great.
Yeah. So I guess that has to get revised. Obviously, chain link fencing wouldn't be permitted, but. So I guess the general consensus is to continue this and do a little tweaking. As far as a list of what we'd like to see in the design guidelines that Commissioner Sprague mentioned.
Yeah, you want me to read off a few things here that we had mentioned before?
Sure.
There's no mention about post caps, caps on masonry, or on sides of enclosures. There's no mention of concrete slab being, I'm sorry. Let me skip that one. We talked about on a wood fence or gates that it needs to be a certain height above the ground because we have problems in this area from ice and snow. And it creates problems getting them opened in the winter when snow builds up. So we would need something maybe stated about a height on the bottom of the gates. Also, we talked about the gates needing separate posts from the fence.
I guess that would that depend on what the structure is made?
Depends on, yeah, I mean, that's going to kind of come into the really honestly, the building review at that point.
Yeah. If it's a structure that they could put hinges on, that would hold up.
Yeah, it was another thing, the number of hinges used.
Yeah, that's going a little too far, I think.
Well, I'm just saying, those are things that were brought up in the other meeting. Bollards. I know some of us agree with bollards and some don't, but.
Well, bollards comes down to where the thing is located, and as far as, is the gate going to swing open and smack into somebody's car or somebody walking by? And that goes back to having a good latch on it too.
But that can be obviously that's a site plan review
Yeah, that's a
issue
site
more than
plan
anything
review.
else.
If it's tucked away in the corner, bollards might not be necessary.
There was a picture of posts that were anchored to the concrete that we didn't like. We didn't want posts anchored.
Oh, they were just drilled in?
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't last.
So those are just things that we had brought up that we didn't or did want to see, and nothing's listed. I'm not sure where that needs to be, so.
Well, that would have to be part of the
Design guidelines.
Design guideline.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all I have.
Okay. Anything else from the commission as far as that list of items we'd like to see? Commissioner Creech?
Back to the gates on a separate post. I think that is pretty much a necessary item because that post has to pretty much hold an in excess 6-foot gate in most cases. Now, I don't know of anything that's going to hold that, even if it's maybe a precast concrete where you could put an anchor through it.
You know, let me ask our building inspector on that for his
I would
opinion.
have trouble with, that even in, a solid masonry unit.
Right.
Because of the porousness of all the joints.
Well, let me ask the building inspector on that because, again, a standard fence post is usually a 4-inch diameter. Maybe they put a 6-inch diameter post for that's the corner and the gate. Again, that would be more.
Rectangular ones or square ones.
So let me ask the opinion of the building inspector.
Especially like in town center, there was a good example of how they did that.
Yeah.
With steel posts or, or a 6-inch round or an 8-inch round that's filled with concrete so that it's going to be able to hold the fence.
Yeah.
So
I'll ask the opinion of our building inspectors on that too, so that the idea of this is so that we're going to have structures that last for a very long time, that look good for the community for a very long time. You don't want something that's just going to fall apart right away. So.
Right, and then our other big thing that we discussed in February was, this is about sanitation as well. So, and what I mentioned earlier is that, in these strip malls, you have an insurance company and then, 6 months later or 2 years later, you have a fast food restaurant.
Correct.
And they're using the wood trash container with, for their restaurant, which you can't keep clean.
Right.
So that's why I was kind of leaning towards, being a little bit more specific on the design guidelines for the health purposes and sanitary purposes more than anything, and it would be more all-encompassing.
We'll look into that a lot more. The only thing I'm a little bit hesitant on saying no wood is because, one, we allow wood fences. Two, we do have property maintenance and health code standards that if somebody isn't maintaining the dumpster enclosure properly, they're not cleaning it, there's the big grease stain on the side of it. We have other codes.
Yeah, but the
that we
whole
can utilize.
maintenance thing in code enforcement is, a whole other issue. That's just more work that we don't need to put on your department. So, I mean, we can nip this in the bud earlier on, and some of the vinyl product that he showed, or the composite product that they brought tonight I was very impressed by that. So, I mean.
I just wanted to, I don't want to put an undue burden on somebody, especially if they're trying to add something to the community that wasn't there before, they're trying to bring in there. I just want to check costs. If the composite materials are coming down to the same price as lumber, as wood, or in the same ballpark, I feel a lot more comfortable in saying no wood, but I just want to check.
Composite and even select red cedar, composite material is still more money.
Yeah.
So, but if you're talking, masonry and these composite materials and or metal materials, you're getting in the same ballpark per square foot. But wood definitely is going to be the least expensive. And as far as a residential, just as long as it's, under an 8 flat or something like that, that should be fine. But I mean, if we're talking where we got 26 units or 50 units or something like that, then those wooden enclosures are not going to last, even with the pedestrian access door. So.
Okay. We can take a deeper dive on that stuff, but again, I appreciate the feedback on this, and this is really almost, I don't want to say it was what I was hoping for on it, but yes, if we can beef up the design guidelines and make the zoning simpler, I think it will be better for everybody.
All right. So then we will continue this. Do we need a date certain?
Yes.
And what would that date be, Marcy?
September 23rd. I mean, that's the next meeting.
Yeah, I thought that looked really
There's too many things on
I was
that
going to say,
meeting.
I thought that one's a little crowded.
It depends how busy you are.
It's October 14th.
All right. Then we're looking for a motion to continue this to our meeting of October 14th.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Kalis votes, or is this a voice? Yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kalis votes yes. Commissioner Yednick?
Yes.
Commissioner Sprague?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Creech?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes. So we don't close this one, and we move on to our other text amendment, 2020-21. Text amendment to modify zoning regulations regarding permitted and special use requirements for restaurants and banks/financial institutions.
Notice is hereby given that the Plan Commission. Oh,
ahead.
sorry, I thought I was jumping the gun. Notice is hereby given that the Plan Commission of the Village of Wheeling will hold a public hearing on September 9th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. in the boardroom of the Village Hall at 2 Community Boulevard, Wheeling, Illinois, to act on a petition by the Village of Wheeling seeking text amendments to Title 19 zoning of the Wheeling Municipal Code, Chapter 19 zoning, Chapter 19.01 definitions, Chapter 19.10 use regulations, Appendix A use table, and associated sections in order to modify zoning regulations regarding permitted and special use requirements for restaurants and banks and financial institutions. Copies of the proposed amendments will be made available to the Village of Wheeling Community Development Department. All persons interested are invited to attend and be heard. Docket 2020-21 to be published in the Wheeling Herald on Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. A text amendment is an amendment to the map and/or text of the zoning ordinance which affects the whole village. In order to be considered for a text amendment, the petitioner is required to demonstrate through testimony of the Plan Commission at a public hearing that the request meets the standards of the village code, including, but not limited to, how the proposed text amendment is compatible with Title 19 and the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Clicker, I
Okay,
assume you're taking this one too?
Welcome
Yeah,
back.
this one shouldn't be contentious at all, so. We got together at the August 12th joint workshop with the village board to discuss some potential uses. These were two of the uses that were deemed on the fast track for changes, one being restaurants. If we are going to try to really increase or maintain that moniker of Restaurant Row, we looked at that, and it's just, restaurants are a special use everywhere in the community. I asked staff to pull records of special uses for restaurants, specifically with the question of, please try to find me one that's been denied, and we couldn't find one. So if that's the case, if every restaurant that's come before for a special use has been approved, it seems logical that restaurants are desirable in the community, and we should remove that encumber or that burden to petitioners. Banks, on the other hand, they are permitted in other financial institutions, so banks, payday loans, even pawn shops and that are making the case now that they should be dubbed financial institutions. So those being permitted, and the way that back in the day when the zoning was enacted, banks were big buildings that were 4 or 5 stories tall that had 250-plus employees, that having those 250-plus employees in your community all day long, every day, shopping, eating, were beneficial. Banks are now basically a glorified ATM with a technician who sits in the room, in an office in case something goes wrong. We don't want to encourage banks and financial institutions to take those prime retail locations, or we'd like to at least review those so that to make sure that they are not taking prime retail locations that could be of a greater benefit to the community. So with those two uses that, again, as the trends and that have changed, we feel that restaurants should be taken to permitteds and banks should be taken to special, or banks and financial institutions to special.
Thank you. Commissioner Yednick, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Clicker, you were so passionate about this at the workshop. I'd feel bad voting against you, so I have no questions. It makes sense.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yeah, I appreciated the whole presentation too at the workshop, so no questions for me.
Commissioner Creech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no questions.
Commissioner Sprague.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Director Clicker for delving into this. I think it's a great idea, and hopefully it helps the village. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalis.
Very logical edit, and no questions.
And I like the idea of streamlining a lot of this stuff, so I have no further questions. So I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Kalis votes yes. Commissioner Sprague?
Yes.
Commissioner Yednick?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Creech?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
6 yeses.
And now I need a motion to close 2020-21.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. You got through that one quick.
That was great. Very efficient.
Let's see, we have no minutes tonight, right? Other business. Go down the line. Commissioner Creech.
Nothing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Thompson.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Commissioner Yednick.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Commissioner Sprague.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing.
Commissioner Kalis with one meeting to go.
That's right. I would like to say I'm very excited to see that the old if furniture law has been cleared, and excited to see the fruition of our approvals there and what comes up. And it'll have to be for me a visit in a few months, I'm sure, but very, very excited to see Dundee growing up, and it's going to be exciting to watch. So that's all for me.
All right. I don't have anything other than to invite anyone who would like to become a plan commissioner.
That's right.
To get their application into the village clerk, because Commissioner Kalis will be leaving at the end of this month. Other than that, how about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
You don't want to adjourn?
Commissioner Kalis, Commissioner Thompson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Sure, opposed?
We are adjourned.
You're hesitating.